All right, so for everyone who is still on or just jumping back on after the break between panels, we're going to go ahead and get started with our second panel, key areas of a portable sanitation business to have under control to be successful. And I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Great, thank you. Those of you that were on the first panel, we did have some, I had some mic issues. So if it happens again, I just got to keep an eye on it. So if I see everybody looking, wondering why I'm not talking, then I'll know to fix it. So what I want to do is for today's discussion, it is really about the key areas of a business, and more specifically, the key areas that we kind of look at when things start to get out of control. And so what I want to do is, before we get started, I want to take a brief moment to introduce the panelists that we have with us. We have Nancy Gump from Andy Gump out of Southern California, and we have Jennifer Corrigan from Florida. So what I'd like to do is give each of you a moment just to introduce yourself. And if you could please let everybody know basically a quick background of your industry experience and the role that you currently hold today.
Okay, which one of you would like us to start?
Since you're talking, I'll say you.
All right, okay. My name is Nancy Gump. I am part of a 3-generation family-owned business. We've been in business since 1956. I don't think my grandfather ever dreamed it would be what it is today when he built the first 5 out of scrap plywood in their garage in Mission Hills. I grew up in this industry, but I've actually been working a part of the company for over 32 years. Yes, I started young. I was like 19 years old. Proud to carry on their legacy and their culture, and it's about wanting to help people. And we have 5 facilities throughout Southern California at this time.
Awesome. How about you, Jennifer?
Wow, great. I get to go after Nancy. Who can beat that? I'm just kidding. I've always admired Nancy and the wonderful culture that Andy Gump has. They're a great company to look up to. And thank you, Satellite, for asking us to be here today. I am sincerely humbled. I have a business degree in hospitality management from FSU, but after 5 years of that experience, I decided to take a slight turn and go into event coordinating, and that's where I found my true destiny in portable sanitation. I worked for my previous employers for a very, very long time. And then I'm a true believer in having allies and not enemies. And fast forward to today, I'll skip all the noise in between. And my 2 partners, we were once very friendly competitors. And now we own 3 businesses together. So I am extremely blessed.
Awesome. So our first discussion earlier today was about leadership and managing relationships in a business. And this topic for this panel is really about the key areas. And there was something that Nancy said a few days ago that really stood out for me, and it was focusing on the vital few, not the trivial many. And so I'd really like that to kind of be our focus for today. What I want to do is I'm actually going to read the context that was given to me before this all started of what this discussion was about. For this session, I want to kick it off by reading the initial description, which I believe will set the context for our discussion. And it was, do you ever feel like you're in a washer machine that never stops, especially when it comes to the administrative side of your business? Routing drivers, billing, payroll, budgeting, employee benefits, management, marketing, CRM, handling growth, employees, equipment, emergency response, winterization, and software. It's the nuts and bolts of your business, and it's critical to your success. So in this session, we're going to hear from speakers on what they have learned in some key areas. And so kind of different from the first session is the first session we had a lot of questions, and then we would discuss the questions. Kind of what I'd like to do today is I'd like to introduce a topic and create a forum for both Nancy and Jennifer to discuss the topic. And the thought is that, the topic will give us a forum or a platform to discuss, but really the discussion should be something that adds value for everybody that's watching today. And I can fully agree to that washer machine mentality. I've been in the industry 31 years, and I remember being a business owner during game on season, always looking at the areas that you say, I'm going to tackle this when it slows down. And guess what? It never really slows down. So the first topic of discussion is culture. And my kind of just some context to that is any encouragement or input that you may have on culture and accountability in this industry.
Jennifer, you want to start first?
Sure. We've always, on a business standpoint, we've always, we guarantee our service. We don't have I don't know if that really fits into the culture. I mean, maybe it does, but
I think it does.
yeah, we fit into our, we guarantee our service. We don't have an answering service. The phone calls come to me, yay, but they do. But we're large enough that we can handle it, but we're small enough that we're like a family. I mean, and I truly mean that. So accountability, we do hold accountability. Our future, I'd say within our 5-year plan, maybe even sooner than that, is our goal is to have the businesses to be employee owned. So when people are calling in, the girls that are answering the phone, they're taking the calls from their customers, the service technicians. Obviously, they're servicing their customers, their job sites, their toilets. So we're transparent. We lay it all out there for our employees to know. Give them something to work towards and look forward to.
Awesome. How about you, Nancy? Any input?
We are, I can so relate to what Jennifer's talking about when you talk about your family. We started out, it was just my grandfather, my dad, his twin brother, and my grandmother that hand wrote the invoices out. My mom came into the picture once I started kindergarten, and she worked in the business for 27 years, doing billing, and payroll. It wasn't called HR back then. It was just payroll. So we've always had, but yet we have 200 employees now. And now I know that sounds like a lot, but guess what? Each of those team members, and we don't call them employees, team members are part of our family. I work very hard personally to get to know each and every one of them. That's hard to do, but I probably know about 75% at this point. And when you have new hires with COVID, that's a little bit harder to do. For us, culture starts from the minute you walk in the door. We have a mirror that has a saying on it that says something like, "You're a reflection of Andy Gump." And we even have something that we attach to our application that talks about our culture. So it starts from the time that they get that application. And I actually got that idea from a friend at actually another organization. And that's important to us. And we talk about culture all the time. For us, we call them Barryisms, but because my dad said them all the time, but so did my grandfather. And we talk about it's us and we, not I and me. It's our customers. It's not my customer. We're not a commission sales force. We will never be. And that surprises some people because they go, well, how did you get to where you are? Based on culture and wanting to help people, it was about one customer, one service, one restroom at a time. And my grandfather always believed if you did a really good job and you didn't overpromise and underdeliver, we built our name and our reputation on word of mouth. There wasn't the internet, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't any of that. But it was if our trucks were clean, if our units were clean, if we serviced when we said we were going to, or if we couldn't, if a truck broke down, we called the customer. So it's all about being proactive. And I think that's all about culture.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, growing up in Northern California, I worked for Acme and Sons that started in 71. And, I've never met you personally. I never met your family, but growing up in the industry, you knew the name Andy Gump. And I thought about managing culture in a business that was 1, 3, 4, 10 years old. the challenges, but imagine managing culture over 3 generations of leadership, and how do you continue that culture and instill that culture in the workforce? And so, anything else?
Every single day. It's what my dad talked about it every day. My grandfather didn't necessarily talk about it. He did it. My dad did it, but he also talked about it. And as I shadowed him for many, many years, I was in an office with him for 5 years, and I was also in trucks growing up my whole life. So I saw what they did and how they did it. And it's just permeated in everything we do. So I think it's that making sure you know what your culture is, but then talking about it all the time. Because if you're talking about it, then people are thinking about it. And when new people come on, it's kind of a joke for us when we can catch them say "I" as many times. And we kind of joke and say, "Well, you owe us a quarter," and they go, "Really?" Like, "No, we're just kidding." But, it's we. So, and that's hard to say, because you think, well, I took the call, but it's customer service, it's operations, it's prep, it's delivery, it's service. It takes all of us to get it done. So once we explain it that way, then it kind of clicks for people.
Yeah, I think I learned that probably around late 20s, when you're getting confidence in your career, but a lot of times you use the words me, my, I, and then to have it beat out of you that those aren't the words you use. It's us, we, the team. And I even catch myself, like, I think it was just yesterday, I was emailing supply chain and I started to say, I have a customer, and I backspaced, we have a customer that needs this. And it's a small twist, a small tweak, but a huge impact, right?
Absolutely.
Anything else, Jennifer, before we anything else on the topic of culture, accountability, before we move on to some other topics?
So I noticed that, before we did this and we were talking about, your title or your role, and, I'll be the first to admit, I can't get into a pump truck and drive it. I don't have my CDL license, but I will tell you that, for a good 15, maybe even longer years, I've always driven a Chevy Tahoe. So when it was time for me to get a new vehicle, I'm like, I think it's practical if I get a truck. So I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I got a pickup truck. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's maxed out. Like, it's a gorgeous pickup truck, but I can fit 2 portable toilets in it, standing up and 1 laying down. And I am not, I will get in my truck and I will deliver a toilet whenever I have to. Now, I can't necessarily unload it by myself, but so we have that mentality that, and even our, we have, a sales manager, and she's like the office mom, but she'll do the same thing. We provide her with a truck as well, and she'll go out. So none of us are too good to jump in. And so that's, whoever, no matter what role you have, if, upper management, ownership, whatever, if you want your employees to do it, you have to be willing to do it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so important.
So in one of our conversations last week, the topic came up of the basics, and the basics being taking care of the customer and providing clean toilets. That's my take on it. Taking care of the customer, toilets are clean. So, and sometimes when I talk to other people in the industry, I'll ask them, are you selling price or are you selling service? So I just want to kind of take some time, however big and broad that conversation gets, but let's just talk about the basics of how, going back to what you said, focusing on the vital few and not the trivial many. What are the basics? I'll stop right there and allow you guys to discuss.
I think, the basics are, when you talk about price versus service, we've never been about price. It's always been about our quality service. But along with that goes knowing your costs. You got to know your costs of the toilet paper, the hand sanitizer, whether you put hand sanitizers in them, seat pads in them, the deodorizer, the cost of the truck, the man hours, and know and break it down per service. If it's $11.15 a service, then, you might want to make a 30% markup on that. You don't have to do what your competitors are doing. if you're showing a newer unit, like if you can see how straight the line is in Jennifer's background, I tried to do a background, but it didn't work for me. So I got to talk to her about that. But, you know, when you see clean, lined portal restrooms all lined up, that's important. When you have a clean truck that comes up, you have a guy that's in a uniform that's, you know, looks nice. All those little things are basics, but they mean so much to the customer. My dad has a saying, I know what you think about what we do, but we're not going to prove you right by doing it for nothing. And when you have to, our job, and I felt this for 30 years, or I'd say 20 years, 25 years when I was in customer service. And I started out, you know, we didn't really have special events at the time. So I was brought in to help with special events. We didn't know, you know, really what we were doing. So we were starting from scratch. And it was our job to educate the customer, because a lot of times they don't know what they need. So it's our job and then usually they want to cut it short, or lowest on the priority list, or even further on the budget list. So it's our job to be able to switch that by saying, you know, do you want your mother or your grandmother or your wife, if you're talking to a man, you know, having to stand in line? If they're not happy, they're going to leave. And so it's a lot of that you have to talk about. And sometimes, yes, price is an issue, but guess what? Then you talk about, well, here's some of our costs. And when you can educate the customer and tell them what your costs are, then they go, you know, then all of a sudden it's not just a portable toilet. You know, we have $100,000 truck that has to deliver them. We have $100,000 service truck that has to service them. You know, so there's a lot that goes into it, and I might be making it a little bit more complicated, but again, it's back to knowing your costs and educating your customer. I think that's, besides providing a clean toilet and besides providing clean restrooms and newer equipment. I mean, even when we did units out of scrap plywood, you know, they were made with metal frames, they were painted, they were so shiny that you could probably, you know, fry an egg on them or something, because they were pretty heavy, but they were immaculate. And that started from the day that we started, but that came from my grandfather. So I think you have to remember, you know, the cleanliness of your units, the cleanliness of your service, educating the customer, and knowing your costs. I think those are some of the, you know, the basics that we've always tried to remember.
How about you, Jennifer?
You know, we'll get those, you know, phone calls, you know, like, you know, I'm out here on a job site and our toilet's dirty and then
Well,
you know, at first you want to be defensive and be like, you know, you're scheduled on Mondays and Thursdays, and our PTO showing our, you know, showing that we were there. You know, your defense mechanism, you want to do that. You want to say that you were there, you serviced it, this, that, and the other thing. But, you know, when you're that, you got to put yourself in that customer's shoes that, you know, on the other end, they're not happy about something. So regardless, you have to take care of it. So you have to investigate it. So you, I don't want to say the customer is always right. Maybe you could say they're never wrong, however you want to verbalize it. But anyway, you have to address it, and then whether they need it. And that's how you know, as much as we want to tell the drivers, like, hey, if you see more people on the job site, if they need more toilets, if they need to increase their service or what have you, you're going to have to send some type of manager or supervisor out there to look at that job site. And then you can readjust toilet count, service count, or what have you, because that person on the other phone or on the other line calling in and expressing a complaint, once you lose a customer to a complaint, you will never get them back. You won't. You will not get them back. So you always have to address service issues no matter what. That's why we always guarantee it. So if I have to get in my car and go out there and take a look at it, I'm more than happy to do so. But, you know, sometimes it's a learning experience. Special events. That's Nancy hit the nail on the head there. It is the least sexy part of an event. Trust me, that's how I got into this, being an event coordinator. It is the least sexy part of an event to plan or to pay for, but it's very important, and we talk about it all the time. But especially if it's an event that you have to pay to get into, you want those people to stay there and to spend that money. And they won't stay there if those toilets are gross. They won't, so, or they won't. But when they talk about how many, that's why I love that PSAI calculator. I got it on my JW Craft website. So whenever someone calls, or they can go in there, they can put in the number of number of hours and how many people are going to be at their event, and I'll just give it to them. And it's not JW Craft calculated. It's our industry. It's not self-serving, if you will. So it's something I like about that. There was something else I wanted to say too, and I totally lost my thought. I should have written it down. But anyway, we can go on to the next. If I think of it, I'll come back.
Well, I was gonna, Jennifer, I think what you talked about was so important. And, we always say that we want portable sanitation to be the reason that your event is a success, and people stay longer, they spend more money, and they want to come back next year. So and sometimes what we've done, if you know the cost of the event, if it's a ticket event or they are, and then roughly number of people, then you divide that by the number, like the cost of what it is for portable sanitation. And look, are you willing to spend 10 cents a person to provide portable sanitation so that people will stay longer and they'll spend more money? And so sometimes, and that's my dad. He was so good at that kind of stuff. And I was able to be in an office and be a sponge and share, for 5 years with him. And I went to Gump University, and it was the best education I got. I went to college too. I didn't actually finish graduating, but I think that's important. And when you talk about listening to customers and their concerns, you're so right. We kind of use this saying with our customer service team. It's called HEAT. Thomas, our sales manager, brought that to us, and it's hear them out, empathize, apologize, and take care of them. And that, whether that's, if they're absolutely irate, we get them right to a manager. If they can, hey, we need to do some research on our end. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We'll have our sanitation supervisor call you, by the end of the day, or depending on when they call. We try to give them at least 2 hours because we need time to research. But we try to do our best to facilitate that, because, and the other thing is, one customer that's upset with you, not only will they not come back, but they're going to tell their friends or their colleagues, and that can spread like wildfire. So it's how you handle whether it's a mistake or a misunderstanding, then they're going to go, wow, they really listen to us. And I think both Jennifer and I feel that that's an important part of our daily business of what we do. Like she talked about getting into a truck. I've actually been in a pump truck. I've driven it down to a canyon because we didn't have anybody else. My mom had a heart attack once she found out, but I figured my dad trusts me. We didn't have CDLs at that time. But yeah, I'm willing. I've been at events where hand washes have run out, and I'm telling the attendants, okay, we're going to take these. These are not, move them. And I start moving them, and he looks at me like, what are you doing? I go, we got to get this done. And so, showing by example is so important, because then the guys, they understand that you're willing to stand side by side with them. You're just not sitting in an office counting the money, because that's not how you're going to build your business or the respect with your operations.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more.
I remembered my thought. Can I share it really quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
So when I talk about when that customer is, when you get a customer complaint and they, call in, you want to have that opportunity to fix it, to rectify it. Let's say it is your fault. Let's say a truck broke down, or an employee called in sick, or whatever. Let's say that it really is your fault, right? And you want the opportunity to rectify it, right? I got it. Thanks. Anyway, so let's bring that into to behind the scenes, like let's say between operator and supplier, no matter who you are. If a supplier has an oops issue, I think all suppliers should have an opportunity to make it right. And one of the things that I see from time to time, which I would discourage everyone, I don't like it when I see on social media operators bashing suppliers because of a mistake. I don't think that that's good behavior, because we wouldn't want it done to us by our customers. Wanted to
Nope, I agree. Something Nancy said earlier that spoke out for me, and it was my context as well, is that we can control how a portable restroom looks when we deliver it, and we can control how a portable restroom looks every time we service it. And my context was my wife, my daughter, my grandmother should be able to use that toilet comfortably, right? And I didn't care if it was construction or special event. It needed to be ready to use. And, you know, talking about costs, like toilet paper. Yeah, you can save 10 cents a roll for a lesser quality toilet paper, but is it toilet paper you would use at home? You know, deodorizer. If you go with the stronger deodorizer, yeah, it might cost you 10 cents more a service, maybe even 20 cents more a service, but you're talking 80 cents a month, right? So anyhow, so those are some of the things, I guess, specifically to service quality.
We lost you. We can't hear you, Brian.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Brian.
Hear you. Hello.
We can't hear you.
I lost you. Huh.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. So specific to service quality, cleanliness of a toilet, what are some things that you do to ensure that the customer receives good service? And I mean specific to the product that they're using.
Product or how we actually service? Go ahead, Jennifer.
I didn't get that first part of your question. I'm sorry, Brian.
Well, a lot of our conversation was in regards to our interactions with the customer, and you know, the first company that I worked for, their context was in good service, a customer only needs to call twice, once to have it delivered and once to have it picked up. So my question is, what do you do to ensure good quality of service to the product that they're using, like specifically to say construction or a special event, that the toilets are clean and represent the image that you want to put out to the industry? Whoever wants to go first.
Doesn't matter to me. Jennifer, you're going to go first or I go first? Doesn't matter. Guy, that's a loaded question. A couple things for us. We do not put the same units out on construction that we would put on special events. We segregate those. So we have a different look for construction and we have a completely different look for special events. That was important to us. Secondly, we go through our units from top to bottom when they're prepped. We use kind of a pressure washer and, you know, different products, whether it's a degreaser for the urinals. Urinals are probably the hardest things to, if you're not on top of those, they can get really yucky and they're hard to clean. And sometimes it's, you know, it sounds crazy, but even oven cleaner works sometimes. So we use some different products. And now we have to disinfect our units prior to delivery as well. And we have our guys wipe them down with we use bleach, 1:5 ratio, and they wipe down the touch points as well so that the customers can see during COVID that we're providing that extra step. Beyond that, we, you know, for us, we use a company called Wallex for our deodorizer. They are competitive. It is expensive, but for us, and I, this is a pet peeve of mine, and I bet it's a pet peeve of Jennifer's too. When I walk into a restroom, I want it to smell nice. I don't want it to just be neutral. I want to walk in and go, wow, this restroom smells really clean. And so I drive our operations people crazy because I'm like, okay, this deodorizer, it neutralizes it, but it doesn't smell nice. So that's important to us. We add seat pads to our units and we do not charge for them. I'm sure it's in the cost of our service, but it's not an add-on, because our philosophy was if I'm a woman, I want to use a seat pad, I want other people to be able to use one as well. Not everybody does that, and you know, it's a preference thing. And then I think the other part of that you want to talk about is how you actually service the unit. We do a 5-minute service. Not 3, not just pump and go. We actually wipe down the cobwebs. We rinse down the unit. We fill our buckets with the deodorizer, it opens the door, it sits, it starts to activate. We use it to scrub down, everything, the seat, the toilet, the urinal, and then we dump the extra in, and then that kind of comes, and it's interesting how our guys kind of have enough that'll come off the side, and then they wash down the actual, what do you call that? The floor, sorry. I was going to say pad, and I'm like, no, it's not called a pad. They scrub the floor, and then we rinse down the whole unit. So our services are more involved. In fact, when we've had guys come from other companies, they're like, we didn't do all this. Like, why do you do all this? Well, that's the quality service that we want to provide. So, and it's providing a nicer unit. If a unit's the roof's been cracked, or our guys call in and say, hey, this, the latch is broke, or whatever those different things are, they call in, we do an exchange out, and we will get that unit exchanged out as quickly as possible. So watching all those details, I think, is a part of all that. It's not just one thing. There's multiple things that you need to look on to provide that quality service.
Great, thank you. Anything from you, Jennifer?
Okay, so I try, I don't always, it might lack a little bit, but I try to do monthly blogs to, sometimes I want to educate our customers. So, and I started it, I haven't published it yet. I was talking about the purpose of the vent stack and, keeping the toilet seat down. But anyway, our vent stack, we keep some people put like screens and like zip tie around the screen, but we have these metal, we get them from John and my two partners also own a hardware store, but these metal, I'm not sure what they call them, but these metal things that fit right on top of our vent stack. So that way they don't, you don't get bugs in there. But anyway, so I try to educate our customers on little things. And I saw someone, I don't know who did it, but someone did a blurb recently about the purpose of the vent stack and keeping the toilet seat down. And I was like, they stole my thunder. But anyway, so, and then every quarter I change the message on our phone. So when someone calls in and it's on hold, right now it's summer, it's very hot in Florida, very humid. And so in the segments, like 15-second segments, it talks about how the heat is brutal and it's buggy, and you might want to think about either increasing your service or adding more toilets to your job site, this and everything, and talk to your sales representative to talk about your increasing your service if you need to. I'm so not doing it any justice at all. You'd have to call and listen to it. Anyway, we use urinal blocks. We use in the summer months, we use, I have no idea if it works or not. It's an advertising thing, the citronella, but we do change the fragrances in the non-summer months, if that exists in Florida. Humid months, maybe. I push it as much as I can. I want 5 to 7 gallons of water in my tanks all the time, because again, Florida, water evaporates or liquid evaporates. So I do that. We use liquid. We don't use the packets. We use 4 ounces per service. We do not skimp on the quality of our deodorizer or the amount that we use. And I remember having a conversation with Corey Morton a long time ago, when I first got started into this business. And he told me that the chemical cannot treat the waste unless the waste is covered. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget those words. So he's right. Anyway, yep. So I think I covered all my notes on that.
Oh, that's good. There's a huge misconception with a lot of people that if they put more deodorizer or more packets, that it's going to solve the issue. And if you don't have enough water, it's not going to work. So I want to move on to another topic. And to me, we had some conversations leading up to today. To me, it seems to be a topic or two topics that kind of get neglected when business is moving fast and growth is occurring fast and it's the busy season. And that is the topic of safety and fleet management. I think for a lot of people, it's an area that we we don't typically address or put focus on until it's a problem. And the right way to run a business is to have it in the forefront. So I want to open up the discussion about, you had mentioned earlier, Nancy, about the trucks being clean. And we talked about the basics. And one of the things I used to say is, if you have clean toilets out in the field, but when you get to your yard's a mess and your trucks are disorganized and your trucks are dirty and the cabs are filthy, that's the context you're setting, right? And so it's going to trickle down. So I'd like to spend some time talking about safety and fleet management. With fleet management, maintenance, compliance, when you're talking safety and fleet management, some of the regulatories that we need to meet, minimizing our risk, if you have a safety program or structure, or how you have built those positions in place to have ownership in the organization.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, because it says my speaker's not working. Forgive me, my phone's ringing and I can't find it. So just
that's all right. We'll ignore it, but I can hear you.
Okay, you covered a lot. So you want us to talk about safety, fleet
management.
And
you have an outstanding program.
Compliance. Huh?
No, let's just hold the context of safety, fleet management, and if you want to add compliance or risk management into that, that's fine. But really, to me, it's the areas that we kind of worry about. Mm-hmm. We may not take action on, and we always say, "Oh, this winter we're going to put that in place." So,
right.
So I'd like to give you some time to talk about that. I think it'd be valuable for everybody on the call.
I think we're always dealing with that. I mean, right now we have more services than we know what to do with. We don't have enough people and we don't have enough trucks. And so and our guys are working long and we're constantly we work 410s, not 8.5s, because we have to drive further distances to get to where the units are. So, but we're always watching that mark because we don't want them to go into double time. So that's part of the safety. You don't want to burn out your people, but it's also, we do what we call VCRs, vehicle certification report or something like it should be inspection report as far as I'm concerned. But, the guys do a walk around every day. They check tires, they check if any fluid's leaking, if there's, their lights aren't working, so that they can make sure that they meet with the mechanics prior to going out in the road. I will give you an example. Just 2 weeks ago, our guy did a walk around, but it wasn't done properly. And a new mechanic went to go service, put all the oil in it. It was a pump truck, so it's 30 cans of oil, which is about $300. And he didn't put the plug in properly. So it leaked in the yard, but then he got, not even to his first job and started having trouble. And so our mechanic said, hey, yeah, it's our fault. But our supervisor said, did he do a proper walk around? Because let me show you all the oil that's sitting in the yard. So it starts with your guys being trained to do walkarounds with their trucks. It also starts with the mechanics knowing that there's certain things they need to be checking when we call them PMs, preventative maintenance. We decided a few years ago to take our preventative maintenance to 4,000 miles instead of 5,000 miles. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember, you're not just running that truck and driving it all day long. When the PTO is on, you're adding hours to the engine. So there's two different types of mileage or hours that you are looking at. So we decided to do that sooner, so maybe we could catch stuff quicker. And that's actually saved us some money on our mechanic bills, whether it's replacements of PTOs, vacuum pumps, all that kind of stuff. So it's also having communication with our service guys and our mechanics. When we started, the mechanics was my dad and my grandfather. They would work all day and then they'd work in the evening and hope that the truck would run the next morning. As we got a little bit bigger, we worked with a local company that could do the basic services And I think the hardest part about finding mechanics is having somebody that's going to work on a PTO or a vacuum pump. You know, they kind of look at it, they don't mind doing diesel work, right, or whatever, but they don't want to necessarily work on that PTO. So it's having good people that are paying attention to those things. Safety has to be something you focus on every day. We do tailgate meetings every payday. The supervisors meet with their immediate team, and we have topics that we talk about, whether it's when it gets hot, we talk about hydrating, drinking water, having Gatorade, staying in the shade if you can, and, taking cooling towels so that you don't, faint from heat exhaustion. We also talk about, distance, people cut our trucks off all the time. Who wants to be behind a big truck? So we always tell our guys to leave at least another truck space in front of them. And that's tough because every day they get cut off thousands of times a day. We talk about backing. We have backing lights on our trucks because we've had, in particular years, lots of backing accidents. So whatever those issues are that you're having and you see that they're trends, you need to be talking about them and you need to find a way to fix them. Like for us, it was backing accidents, so we added backing cameras to our trucks. Yes, it's an investment, but guess what? That backing accident can cost you, depending on what kind of car you hit, it could cost you $100,000. So you have to look at the costs that, yes, you're putting into the vehicle, but versus the cost that you're saving of not having that backing accident. So, that's the part that I can tell you, and then maybe Jennifer can talk, and if I can think of anything else, I'll add to it.
Yeah, if anyone ever is in the area where Nancy is, you need to stop by because she's got a great facility there.
Well, thank you.
Your safety presentation was impressive. Okay, so we're not that large, and so I had to take some notes here because we have you can call it a payroll company, but our company calls it something else. So we don't handle our like our HR services. We outsource that. But within that company, we have like our like a safety coordinator that comes to our facility often, and he helps us do our training. Now he doesn't know about the portable sanitation business, but we work together with him, and then he helps us with our training. So for those who use payroll companies, or PEOs, what they're called these days, I guess, they will have those safety coordinators that can help you with that. And we can always talk about that offline if you need to. So we have our drivers that get PSAI certified, which is a good educational tool as well. And then when they take the certification exam, you have to use a non-biased proctor, I think is what they call them. So the safety coordinator from the PEO company came in and was our non-biased proctor because they had to administer the exam for the technicians. Let's see what else I got here. Oh yeah, so the PEOs offer like your workman's comp, your HR services, your
insurance company.
They can offer like health insurance and things like that too. And then he also does forklift operation and shop warehouse hazards and PPE, stuff like that too. And then our equipment vehicle general liability company is very well versed in our industry. And so he has sent me multiple videos that we've utilized that come with exams. This is the best part ever. So we'll give them watch the videos and talk about it. And yes, they do their training, but each vehicle is different, but they'll do training on these large vehicles and talk about safety hazards and this and everything. And then we'll give them an exam just to make sure they are paying attention, the do's and don'ts, driving a large vehicle. So that our insurance company does that. And again, he's really well versed in our industry. So that's a huge benefit there. We do our meetings, those types of meetings, we do those quarterly, and then we have smaller meetings like you, Nancy. Well, you do them once a week, but we do our meetings about once a month.
We have a question from one of the viewers, and my goal, because I'm sure we are all kind of tired and burned out about anything related to COVID, but it's a great question, and that is, how do you manage the safety meetings and keeping those on track with the way things are being done right now? And so, Nancy, since you have a fairly large workforce, the questions from Sandy Leal at Hanson and Fitch in Northern California is, how do you go about keeping things managed on the safety aspect?
Sure.
Right,
Sandy, tell Todd I said hello. Todd and I are good friends and have been friendly competitors and talked for a long time. You know, we break them down. We actually meet outside and we have masks on and we're 6 feet apart and we practice social distancing. Our service department, which is actually 24 drivers right now, then we actually have 3 supervisors in that department, and they will take, they've got 8, not more than 10 guys, and then they meet separately. So it's not all 24 meeting at one time. And we didn't get this big overnight, believe me. It's been, you know, we didn't have a safety program. In fact, one of the first PSAI shows that we did back in 1996-ish, 7, we had a truck that rolled. And my dad had it right out front and center for people to see because he wanted everybody to learn from our mistakes. And so that's, you know, and what happened was he was driving too fast. He was coming down a hill. He wasn't using the downshift gears properly. And he hit the brakes. The brakes froze, you know, where they got overheated, and he rolled it. And he's lucky, you know, luckily he didn't get hurt and we didn't hurt anybody else. But we, so those are things that the COVID you have to take seriously. You have to make sure that you're, you know, either meeting outside, you know, wearing the masks. Our guys are asked to wear their mask at all times. We've actually had work sites that have said, hey, your guy doesn't have a mask on. We could be fined a couple $1,000s. We're not happy. And they sent us a picture. And so we showed it to this driver and he kind of said, well, I was leaving the site. That doesn't matter. I go, doesn't matter until you get in that truck. And if you have a helper, you need to be wearing your mask as well. So we're on it all the time. And I think, you know, making sure that you practice that social distancing is critical. I think also if you have somebody that calls you and says, I'm not feeling well, do not come to work. We've made that absolutely clear. Even if you just have a cold, do not come to work right now, because until we know, and we've had guys that have tested positive for COVID, not very many, not at the same facilities. And it's been outside of work, not at work. And yet they stay home until, you know, the doctor, we ask them to go to their doctor, you know, follow their guidelines, and until they, you know, they're cleared to come back for duty. So that's been important too, is to have those parameters that you will, and we had to create all that. All of us didn't know what we were going to do. So we had to kind of watch what the CDC and World Health Organization was asking us to do. And each state's different. And California is very difficult. We're one of the, I mean, like Florida's open. We're kind of opening, but they're very picky about what we open and what we do. But I think that, you know, having the meetings outside and having 10 or less and social distancing and wearing masks is very important. Also, we have hand sanitizers everywhere, and we have hand sanitizer gel in the trucks. And we ask the guys to wash their hands continuously throughout the day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So one question on fleet and safety before we move on, and I do have a question from one of the participants, is in regards to safety and fleet, you know, you talked about it earlier in a newer business, family-run business, the owner, the dad, I can relate. You're the person that routes, you're the person that takes orders, you're the person that bills, you're the one that rebuilds the pumps, and you're the one that works on the trucks. Then there's that medium-sized business where you're kind of growing, and maybe you ask a lead guy, hey, can you take care of safety? And then you have another guy that you say, hey, can you kind of oversee the fleet? But as you get bigger, you need designated people to own those roles. But I think it's something where a lot of us find people to fill the hole rather than somebody to own the position. So my question is, with safety and with fleet, did you get to a spot where you had to just specifically put somebody in to own that role for the company? And how did that work?
We use consultants like Jennifer was talking about through, you can also reach out to OSHA and see what their requirements are, but we worked with a consultant through our insurance company that talked about safety. We had a gentleman in-house that we thought might fit that role, and we asked him if he would consider doing it, but we asked him to go to school and get certified in different levels of safety, and he was willing to do that. So and he has I don't know what her role is, but she does safety as well, but she's more on the admin side and things like that. But Rick is talking to the customers, hearing what their complaints are. He's talking to the drivers. We also do a safety orientation. So before our guys even go out on the trucks, like Jennifer was talking about, they do the videos. We do it with actually people. We like that personal touch. We do some video training, but it's also making sure we ask them to, after we show them what to do, then we ask them to do it themselves. So we also do ride-alongs with new guys, not only with our safety guy, but then also with our supervisors. So we come at it a couple different ways. And that's from learning from our mistakes, when we weren't making safety as a priority and we had too many accidents and incidents. So once we asked Rick to own it, he did own it, and we have a great program because of it. But it's taken us probably 10, 15 years to get there. It didn't happen overnight by any means.
As a comment too, to like safety and fleet, that I found is sometimes when you bring somebody in to really own that role, it almost creates a sense of accountability towards ownership, meaning you have people that are working for you that are bringing concerns to you that you have to consciously choose to address and correct, right? And so because somebody who owns safety, they're going to bring a lot of issues to you that need to be addressed. And so I found that that's also a struggle, is you almost create a sense of accountability to ownership on what needs to be done, right? Like, in order for us to be compliant, in order for us to minimize risk, these are the things we have to do. And
Right.
it takes you to do that.
You have to support that. You have to be willing to say, hey guys, we need to support this. We need to have eye washing stations. We need to have fire extinguishers wherever they ask us to have them. All those little things, when you're smaller, sometimes you can get away with that, but it doesn't mean that it's not important. And safety should always be on the forefront of what we do, because one accident, or even having a spill kit on the truck, we learned that the hard way, and for us, a spill kit is, basically a gallon bucket with kitty litter and absorbent, and there's a way for us to clean it up. So, we learned that the hard way. So everything we've done is by experience of surviving your mistakes. Or, I would encourage all of you, and I don't know how many are on the call, and Jennifer's talked about this a little bit, is join an organization, like the PSAI, Portable Sanitation Association International. You can go and do roundtables, and you can talk. Even right now, they're doing virtual roundtables, I think every 2 weeks. We've talked about COVID. We've talked about, different operational aspects. And we're always trying to connect with people so that they can learn from other people. And even, people say, oh, well, the Andy Gump's so big, or they've been around a long time, but we're still learning. And there's things I learn every year from PSAI. So don't be afraid to join an organization, and like you're joining the women's conference. But, the more that you expose yourself to knowledge, the more that you can help your operation be stronger.
You're
And
raising
that's
the
important.
bar in the level of our
Absolutely.
industry. And it's so very, very important.
So there's 2 questions from the viewers. I think they're fairly simple questions. So one is, do you use a GPS system, or how do you track your assets, specifically being restrooms? So I'm going to say, do you use a GPS or tracking system? And I would say for plastic restrooms or restroom trailers.
We do have a GPS where we can pinpoint where our units are, whether they're construction units or they're trailers. That's done on a route. we do not have a tracking system necessarily where we brand our equipment. So we put it on the contract number, but on the restroom trailers, we tried to do barcoding, and they fall off or different things like that. It's expensive. The wands are expensive. So we don't actually have an actual tracking system, except that we know by an inventory board that we have what trailer, what license plate is at what event at any given time. And that seems to work pretty well for us. I mean, I don't even think we've had a trailer stolen. We're very careful. Sometimes we're picky too. We don't do city parks or beaches because we know the equipment's going to get annihilated, so or stolen or damaged. We don't do necessarily protesting because things can get rowdy and they can knock over the restrooms and decide to burn them or whatever. So sometimes you have to be picky, but tracking your inventory can get really expensive. But I think if you can use work with your software company to see if they can use a GPS to track your inventory and pinpoint it on, almost like an old fashioned map where you would pinpoint where your units are. I think that's a place to start.
So you made a comment that leads to the next topic. I had one question from a participant, and that is the cabs of your trucks. Who's responsible for the condition of that? The drivers, or do you have somebody in the yard that takes care of that at the end of the day, the inside?
Oh, the drivers, 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jennifer's absolutely right. When we assign a truck to a certain driver, my dad would kind of joke and go, do we have a parrot that's working with us? And they wouldn't understand it. And he's like, well, somebody keeps leaving sunflower seeds in truck, whatever it was. And so, having a clean truck is very important to us, both inside and out. We ask the drivers to wash their trucks at least once a week, and they stock their units. Now down at North Hollywood, they are still responsible for the inside of their cab and all that. But we do have, because of just the sheer demand, we do have somebody that actually stocks the trucks at night. He's stocking them, and we have somebody that comes in and washes them just because they don't have the time there. But our smaller facilities, they do everything. They wash it, they stock it, and it's their truck, it's their responsibility. And also when they do their VCRs, they need to show if there's any dents or, if they backed up to a broken light. And if they're not showing that, then that makes us wonder, can we trust you? And trust is the most important thing that you can have with a team member. And so, we make sure, whether it's the mechanics that catch it or the supervisors that catch it, but we tell them, look, we'd rather you tell us than we have to ask you questions and you're fishing around trying to find some answer that we know that you're not being honest. If you're not honest, you could actually lose your job for it, because we need to be able to trust you. But yeah, it's the driver.
Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of had the same culture, which was, even if we had prep guys that dumped the trucks and got them ready to go and did all the paper products, is the cab was the driver's responsibility. And it was more of a respect, because we also had people that would come in and wash the trucks. But you don't just hand your truck over to somebody else a filthy mess. You leave it in good condition. So last topic, we have about 5 minutes. So if you have any input or words of encouragement, because we don't have a lot of time on the topic, but I wanted to basically system, software, routing, and billing. And I know that's a huge topic. So I think this is really more of a response of encouragement or a response of, any word you may have for anybody who's watching.
Jennifer, do you want to just talk about that one a little bit?
Okay, so I'm going through this right now, and I will be brief, and you're more than welcome to reach out offline. I've, for I'd say a good 4 years, I have been down this rabbit hole. I finally made a decision. I wrote down all my pains and I wrote down all my wants. And I said this to the panel last week. I want my cake and eat it too. And I didn't want to settle. I've got, JW Craft has been in business for over 30 years. I have a huge customer base. It's a lot of information to bring over. We have a lot of job sites that, with a lot of notes and a lot of information that we didn't want to lose. We don't just want, the billing and the CRM, and I wanted the routing. I wanted the route optimization. We also, the PTO, PTO detector or whatever, we use Fleetmatics right now, but I didn't want that. I wanted to go into my my software system, pull up a job site, and I want to see that I had the route optimization. I can pull up that customer, and then I can see that PTO was on at 12:30 in the afternoon. It was on for a minute and a half. I know that toilet was serviced 100%. And then I want all the when the services need to be done. Anyway, it is more than a 5-minute conversation, but we made a decision. Right now we're going through implementation. My drivers are going to all be on tablets, and anyway, like I said, I can have this conversation offline, but anyway, it's been a tedious process, but I'm excited about it.
I think that's what scares people is it's like, oh, I don't want to go through that. It's too complicated. But I think, we've gone through different softwares over the years, and anytime you do an implementation, it's challenging. But I think you've got to ask yourself, like Jennifer said, list, what are you struggling with? What do you want? And whatever program you're talking to, it needs to be flexible. It's got to be able to grow with your needs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want accounting on there? Do you want billing and software? Do you, we're able to take pictures from our drivers, and they're able to send it to us in real time so that we can, if the customer says, oh, you weren't there to service, we can say, yeah, we were. Here's the picture. And it happened at whatever, 10:54 a.m. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And like Jennifer says, both of us would be available offline. We're happy to give you our email address and our phone numbers to answer any individual questions, because it does get complicated pretty quick when you're talking about routing and software. But I think asking as many questions as you can, and even if it drive the people nuts, but if they can't meet your needs, then they're not the right company for you. If they're not willing to be flexible, they're not the right company for you. So you have to do your homework. You have to do your due diligence. And you also want somebody, we ended up hiring somebody that speaks that language. I don't speak IT. I don't speak software and all that stuff. That's not my gift. My gift is sales and marketing. So, we thought that we needed to bring somebody in, and that's what we finally did. And it's been worth its weight in gold. So, if you don't have the time for it, don't be afraid to hire somebody for this. Even if it's on a consulting basis to start, and then you offer them a full-time position. That's actually how we started when we switched from writing it into the, almost the 80s and the 90s. So, we didn't switch to computers right away. So, but it's a pretty daunting task. And then the training, and like Jennifer says, giving the drivers tablets, they have the larger cell phones. They do not have tablets, but they're able to do their routes. We have paperless routing. We just went to paperless like 3 months ago. There's been some growing pains with that, but it's been very successful. And so, don't be afraid to try things and ask questions.
Awesome. So I have some feedback on the software topic just as a close, and that is we will all have our opinions and we'll all have our preferences, and I've been doing this for just over 30 years, and my take is there is no perfect software for this industry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
if you wait for the perfect software, you won't make a decision.
Right.
Nancy said, do your homework. My suggestion would be request a presentation, do a test run. But my biggest encouragement would be take action. I can't tell you how many business owners I've met that have been paralyzed to take action because they don't think they have the right answers. So each year that goes by and each year that they grow and they haven't chosen a software, then it becomes a more daunting task.
Right.
And it's funny that Nancy said about hiring somebody. So when I finally rolled out a software, I brought somebody in just to own that project. And that was the goal. I couldn't do it. I kept putting it off. I kept procrastinating. So it really became about, we needed somebody on the team that this was their job was to. And so it was the implementation and the rollout. And then the last thing I have in closed, going kind of to what both Nancy and Jennifer said, which is, if you talk to a lot of people who have been in the industry, especially in a family business, is there's a natural progression of mentoring. Maybe our parents mentored us, maybe our grandparents mentored us, but there's a natural progression of mentoring. And you heard about friendly competition. And it's like picking somebody that's in the industry outside of your market that you can lean on as a mentorship type relationship. And so that was just all I had as a close. I want to turn it back over to Michelle. I want to thank you guys for the time you put into getting prepared. I want to thank you for your time today. And I, to be quite honest, I was nervous leading up till today, but I'm glad that I got to be a part of it and hang out with you guys, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you to all of our panelists, of course, Nancy, Jennifer, and Brian, and then Molly, Marin, Mila, and Molly twice. All right, so this wraps up our session today. We have one more session. Next week will be our final session with Caroline Wanga. She will talk to us about how to courageously listen, which Caroline says is the key to success with your employees and customers. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, OECS, Allied Graphics, Essentium, Wolf Motors, Satellite Shelters, Fowles Fabricating, Hayes, HMI, and our VIP sponsors, Fleet Pride and TCF. As always, it's so nice to hear how our industry shares with each other, and we appreciate all of the feedback that we get from everybody, and hope you found some good insights today.